You are standing on a beach in England, and you are absolutely certain you are in the wrong country. The water in front of you is not gray, it is not murky, it is not the kind of flat, uninviting color that most people associate with the British coastline. It is vivid, glowing, impossible turquoise, so clear you can see the sand shifting on the bottom even several meters out. The cliffs rising on either side are ancient granite, streaked gold and rust in the afternoon sun. The sand beneath your feet is pale and soft and made almost entirely of crushed seashells. And carved into the cliff directly above you is a stone theater, built by one woman with her bare hands, that has been staging performances under the open sky for nearly 100 years. This is Porthcurno. This is Cornwall. And this is the most Mediterranean place in Britain that has never once been anywhere near the Mediterranean. Porthcurno sits at the far southwestern tip of England, tucked into the coastline of West Cornwall, just a few miles from Land's End, which is the most westerly point of the British mainland. It faces south, sheltered by towering granite headlands on either side that wrap around the cove like two cupped hands, protecting the beach from the prevailing Atlantic winds and creating a natural microclimate that feels noticeably warmer and calmer than the coastline just around the corner. That geographical positioning is the first piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding why Porthcurno looks and feels so different from almost every other beach in the country. The headlands do not just block the wind, they create a stillness on the water, particularly in summer, that allows the sea to settle into a clarity that is genuinely rare on British shores. The color of the water is the thing that stops people when they first see it. First-time visitors have described the experience as disorienting, as though their brain is refusing to accept that what they are looking at is real. That vivid turquoise hue is not a trick of photography or an optical illusion exaggerated by a camera filter. It is created by a specific combination of natural conditions that Porthcurno happens to possess in exactly the right proportions. The sand on the beach is extraordinarily fine and almost white, made up largely of crushed shell material that has accumulated over centuries of Atlantic wave action. When sunlight passes through clear, shallow water and strikes that pale sand below, it reflects back upward through the water column with that distinctive blue-green glow. The purer the sand, the finer the grain, the clearer the water, and the more direct the sunlight, the more intense the color becomes. On a bright summer's day at Porthcurno, with a blue sky overhead and a gentle swell pushing in from the southwest, the effect is genuinely breathtaking. The writer J.T. Blight visited Porthcurno in 1860 and recorded his amazement at the sand, noting that it appeared to be made entirely of crushed seashells, so delicate and beautiful, and left so smooth by the waves that he described it as almost a pity to leave footprints in it. That observation, made over 160 years ago, remains as accurate today as it was then. The beach has not changed in its fundamental character. It is still the same pale, shell-rich sand. The same granite headlands stand guard over either side of the cove. The same clear Atlantic water floods in and out with the tide. What has changed is the number of people who know about it, and the speed with which a photograph of Porthcurno on a sunny day can travel around the world and convince someone who has never visited the UK that the image must have been taken somewhere in Greece or Croatia or the south of France. The name Porthcurno itself carries centuries of history inside it. It is thought to derive from the ancient Cornish language and is believed to mean the Cornish Cove or Cornwall's port, enshrining within the place named the ancient Cornish word for the duchy, which is Curno. The area has been inhabited and visited for a very long time. According to local tradition, a 6th century Celtic saint named St. Leven is said to have landed at Porthcurno and established his home on the cliffs above the cove. The landscape has a quality of timelessness to it that makes these ancient stories feel entirely plausible. When you stand at the water's edge and look back at the cliffs rising above you, it is easy to imagine the same scene playing out across many different centuries. The same water, the same granite, the same extraordinary light bouncing off the shell white sand. But Porthcurno's history is not only ancient, it is also surprisingly modern, and it connects this quiet Cornish cove to the entire history of global communications in a way that almost nobody expects when they first arrive at the beach. What lies beneath the sand at Porthcurno is not just shell and granite. Running under the beach, buried in the seabed and stretching out into the Atlantic, are the remnants of the submarine telegraph cables that once made this tiny village the most important communications hub on the planet. In 1870, an entrepreneur named John Pender completed the laying of the first international telegraph cable to come ashore at Porthcurno, a cable that stretched all the way to India and allowed a message to travel between Bombay and London in the time it had previously taken a letter to cross a single county. The very first message sent through that cable on the 23rd of June 1870 was received at Pender's house in London, where he was hosting a party attended by the Prince of Wales. That moment changed everything for Porthcurno. Over the following decades, more cables arrived. Connections were made to Newfoundland, France, Spain, and Gibraltar. The Eastern Telegraph Company, formed in 1872 through the merger of several cable operating businesses, grew to become the largest of its kind in the world, and Porthcurno sat at the center of its operations. Its peak, the cable station at Porthcurno, was operating as many as 14 submarine cables simultaneously, making it the largest submarine telegraph station in the world. On this small, picturesque cove in the far west of Cornwall, words were flying beneath the ocean to every corner of the British Empire. In 1938 alone, approximately 231 million words were transmitted through the Porthcurno cables. By 1944, during the height of the Second World War, that figure had risen to 705 million words in a single year. The wartime role of Porthcurno deserves particular attention because it adds a layer of drama to the beach that most visitors walking across the sand have no idea is sitting directly beneath their feet. By the time the Second World War began, the surface telegraph station at Porthcurno was considered dangerously vulnerable to enemy attack. The cables running through this tiny cove were a critical artery of British military and government communication, and losing them could have had consequences for the entire war effort. In 1941, miners were brought in to cut tunnels deep into the solid granite hillside above the beach. The telegraph equipment was moved underground, hidden inside the rock, where it could continue to operate even under aerial bombardment. Those tunnels were later reinforced with concrete and equipped with a secret escape route. Today, they survive as one of the most fascinating heritage attractions in Cornwall, open to visitors as part of the PK Porthcurno Museum of Global Communications, where you can walk through the same granite passages that kept Britain's wartime communications alive. The cable station operated for exactly 100 years, finally closing in 1970. But the cables themselves did not disappear. They are still there, under the sand, under the sea, rusting slowly into history as newer fiber optic cables carry the digital age's communications along the same ocean floors that the telegraph cables once crossed. When you sit on Porthcurno Beach and let the sand run through your fingers, you are sitting on top of one of the most historically significant sites in the entire history of human communication. Most visitors have no idea. They are too busy staring at the water, which is, entirely understandably, still the most immediately compelling thing about the place. The Minack Theatre is the other defining feature of Porthcurno, and it is arguably one of the most extraordinary man-made structures in the United Kingdom. It sits on the cliff directly above the beach, carved into the granite outcrop at a height that gives its audience a view of the stage with the Atlantic Ocean spreading out behind it to the horizon. The story of how it came to exist is the story of one remarkable woman named Rowena Cade, who purchased the land on the clifftop in the 1920s for the sum of £100 and proceeded, over the following decades, to build a world-class open-air theatre largely with her own hands. The Minack Theatre's origins began in 1929, when a local theatre group staged a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream in the meadow above the cove. Rowena Cade watched the performance and decided that what this landscape truly deserved was a permanent theatre stage, not in a meadow, but on the cliff itself, with the ocean as its backdrop. Beginning in 1931, she and her gardener Billy Rawlings began clearing the gorse-covered gully on the clifftop and carving terraced seating directly into the granite. The concrete used to construct the seating areas and steps was mixed, using sand taken from Porthcurno Beach below. Rowena Cade is said to have used a screwdriver to etch names, dates, and Celtic designs into the wet concrete with her own hands, and she continued making improvements and additions to the theatre for the rest of her life. The name Minack comes from the Cornish word Minack, which means stony or rocky place, and it is a name that perfectly captures the rugged, elemental character of the setting. The theatre seats 750 people and hosts a summer season of performances running from May through September each year, with different theatrical companies staging productions, ranging from Shakespeare and classical drama to contemporary plays and musicals. Every single seat in the auditorium looks out over the stage, with the ocean behind it. Watching a play at the Minack on a clear summer evening, with the sun setting over the Atlantic and the turquoise water of Porthcurno Bay glowing far below, is described by those who have done it as one of the most memorable theatrical experiences available anywhere in the world. The subtropical garden surrounding the theatre, developed by Rowena Cade from the 1930s onwards and maintained to this day, provides an additional layer of beauty with plants that thrive in the mild Cornish climate and give the clifftop a lushness that feels entirely at odds with the exposed granite landscape just beyond its boundaries. For visitors planning a trip to Porthcurno, the practical details matter as much as the beauty of the place. The beach is south-facing, which means it captures maximum sunshine throughout the day and sits naturally sheltered from the wind by the headlands on either side. There's a pay-and-display car park located above the beach near the Minack Theatre, and the beach itself is reached via a sandy path and a set of steep steps, which means it is not wheelchair accessible. Access from the car park to the sand takes approximately 5 to 10 minutes on foot. In the summer months, the beach is patrolled by lifeguards, which makes it suitable for swimming families, though anyone visiting should be aware that even on warm days, The Atlantic water temperature at Porthcurno remains firmly in the range of 12 to 16 degrees Celsius. It looks tropical. It does not feel tropical. That is the essential, honest truth of swimming on a Cornish beach, and Porthcurno is no exception. Dogs are welcome on the beach until the 1st of July each year, after which they are banned during the peak hours between 10 in the morning and 6 in the evening until the end of August. This seasonal restriction is worth knowing about for anyone planning a visit with a pet. There's a small cafe near the beach offering refreshments, and toilets are signposted from the car park. For those wanting to explore further, the Southwest Coast Path runs along the cliff tops around Porthcurno and provides some of the most dramatic coastal walking in England, with views stretching in both directions along the granite-edged Cornish coastline. To the west, the path leads toward Porthgwara and Land's End. To the east, it connects to Logan Rock and the fishing village of Mousehole, which is pronounced Mousel by locals, as any visitor who says it phonetically will quickly discover. The timing of a visit to Porthcurno matters considerably. The beach can become extremely busy during peak summer weeks, particularly in July and August, when the narrow country lanes leading down to the cove create bottlenecks that turn what should be a relaxing day trip into an exercise in patience. The roads around Porthcurno are genuinely narrow, single track in places, and the village has limited capacity for large volumes of traffic. Visiting before the school summer holidays begin in late May or June, or after they end in September, gives a very different experience of the place. The water is still clear, the weather is often still warm, and the beach is far less crowded. On a quiet May day with the bank holiday weekend bringing warmth across the southwest, Porthcurno can be experienced with something approaching the serenity that the landscape itself seems to be asking for. Cornwall's coastline has been celebrated and ranked repeatedly by major travel organizations in recent years, and Porthcurno consistently appears at or near the top of every credible list of the finest beaches in Britain. It was among 4 UK beaches named in the top 50 beaches in Europe by the world's 50 best beaches ranking, a vote drawn from more than 1,000 travel professionals. It is regularly cited as one of the most beautiful beaches in England by outlets ranging from The Times to Lonely Planet. The combination of the turquoise water, the white shell sand, the granite cliffs, the iconic theatre perched above, and the extraordinary hidden history beneath the beach makes Porthcurno genuinely unlike anywhere else on the British coastline. It is not simply a pretty beach. It is a place where natural beauty, human ambition, wartime drama, and centuries of history have converged on a single small cove in the far west of Cornwall. There is also a cove sitting just to the left of Porthcurno, when viewed from the water that adds another dimension to the visit, for those willing to look for it. Peddenvounder is a small, even more secluded beach that, until recently, could be accessed via a steep scramble down the cliff face. It has long been considered by those who know Cornwall well to be among the most visually dramatic small coves in England, with an even tighter frame of granite cliffs and water that, in certain light conditions, surpasses even Porthcurno for sheer chromatic intensity. Access to Peddenvounder has been restricted due to dangerous rockfalls on the cliff path, and visitors should always check the current situation before attempting to reach it. But even its existence, just around the headland from Porthcurno, illustrates something important about this particular stretch of Cornish coastline. It is not one exceptional beach in an otherwise ordinary setting. It is an entire section of coast, where the geology, the orientation, the clarity of the water, and the quality of the light conspire repeatedly to produce something that the rest of the British Isles simply cannot match. The Southwest Coast Path, which passes directly through the Porthcurno area, is itself one of the great walking routes in England. At 630 miles in total length, it circles the entire southwestern peninsula of Britain from Minehead in Somerset around to Poole in... The section running past Porthcurno is widely regarded as one of the finest stretches of the entire path, with views from the cliff tops that reveal the full geometry of the cove below and the ocean spreading out in every direction, walking even a short section of the path above Porthcurno, looking down at the turquoise bay with the Minack Theatre perched on its rocky promontory and the distant smudge of the Lizard Peninsula visible on the horizon, gives a perspective on the landscape that the beach itself, for all its beauty, cannot quite replicate. The combination of the elevated viewpoint, the immense scale of the Atlantic, and the theatrical improbability of a stone amphitheater appearing on a Cornish clifftop creates an image that stays with people for a very long time after they have made the journey home. The broader question that Porthcurno raises, every time a new visitor arrives and stops walking the moment they see the water, is why more people in Britain are not already aware of what is sitting on their own doorstep. The answer, in part, is geography. Porthcurno is not close to anywhere. It requires a deliberate journey to the far end of the country, past Plymouth and Truro and Penzance, all the way to the western edge of the Cornish peninsula. For most of England, it is a 4 to 5 hour drive. For people in the north of the country, it can take considerably longer. That distance is a filter. It keeps Porthcurno from being overwhelmed the way that some more accessible beauty spots have been. though July and August still bring visitor numbers that test the infrastructure of the surrounding lanes and car parks. The effort of getting there is, in every meaningful sense, part of the experience. You do not stumble upon Porthcurno. You go there on purpose, and the moment you come over the final hill and see the cove spread below you with the theatre on the cliff and the turquoise water catching the light, the distance evaporates instantly. It is also worth noting that the timing of this particular story, published by yourweather.co.uk, just as the UK heads into what is shaping up to be one of its hottest bank holiday weekends in living memory, is not accidental. When temperatures across southern England are already nudging 28 and 29 degrees Celsius, when the air feels genuinely warm rather than merely acceptable, when the sky overhead is a deep and uninterrupted blue, the idea of sitting on a pale shell sand beach in front of turquoise water shifts from a pleasant daydream into something that feels immediately urgent and attainable. Cornwall in warm weather is a different proposition from Cornwall in a gray drizzle. The same beach that can feel beautiful but remote on an overcast October afternoon becomes something close to perfection on a clear May day with the temperature climbing. The light in the far west of England during late spring, when the sun hangs high and the air is clear, has a quality that painters and photographers have been traveling to capture for centuries. It makes the water even more vivid. It turns the pale sand almost luminous. And it transforms Porthcurno from a remarkable beach into what can genuinely be argued is one of the most beautiful small coves in the whole of Europe. This is the beach that makes people question what they thought they knew about British summer holidays. It is the beach that makes the case, more eloquently than any travel article or marketing campaign, that you do not have to fly to the Mediterranean to find waters that glow with that impossible blue-green light. You do not have to book a flight to Croatia or Greece or the Amalfi Coast to stand on white sand and look out at a sea that appears to belong somewhere warmer and more exotic than England. Porthcurno sits here, on the southwestern edge of Britain, doing all of that without apology, in a landscape shaped by 6 centuries of human history, beneath a theatre carved from granite by one woman's sheer determination, on top of cables that once carried the communications of an empire. It is stunning, it is real, it is waiting. And if you have never been, there has never been a better time than right now, with the warmth building across the southwest in the summer season, just beginning to make the journey to the most Mediterranean beach in Britain.